is Radio Prague International, coming to you from the Czech capital.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sierra Krieger-Wolf, and you're listening to Czechia in 30 Minutes, the show where we give you a rundown of what's recently been happening in the country in just half an hour. Coming up on today's show, Czechs are marking the 58th anniversary of the Soviet-led invasion that crushed the Prague Spring reforms. We'll hear from artist Hynek Martinec on Jan Palach's legacy, and a broken angel believed to have inspired one of Karel Kryl's 1969 protest songs is coming home. But first, here's the news with Daniela Lazarova.
News.
The Czech Republic today marks the 58th anniversary of the invasion of Czechoslovakia by Soviet-led Warsaw Pact troops that crushed the Prague Spring reforms. The invasion began overnight on August 21st, 1968, and dozens of Czechoslovak citizens were killed in the first hours of the invasion alone, either in clashes with the troops or in traffic accidents caused by the occupying forces. Commemorative events honouring their memory have been taking place around the country. In Prague, one of the main events took place outside Czech Radio's headquarters on Vinohradská Street, where some of the worst clashes with the invaders took place. Addressing the gathering, President Pavel stressed the importance of public service media both in August 1968 and today, when he said there is once again growing pressure to restrict them. Senate President Miloš Vystrčil echoed those sentiments, saying that independent media and courage are among the first targets of those in power who want to impose normalization and bring society under control. He called for courage and urged people not to bend their spines. The speeches of Chamber of Deputy Speaker Tomio Okamura and Finance Minister Alena Schillerova, who represented the ruling parties, were met with booing and chants of shame, reflecting anger over the government's plan to abolish license fees and replace them with state funds. Cultural events marking the anniversary in Prague include Nevermore 68 Festival at Prague's exhibition grounds and a Music Against Forgetting event in the lower part of Wenceslas Square. Several hundred people gathered on Boris Nemtsov Square outside the Russian embassy in Prague 6 on Thursday evening to mark the anniversary of the 1968 invasion. They also expressed support for Ukraine, which has been defending itself against Russia's invasion since 2022. The event, called Go Home, Ivan, was organized by 4 non-profit organizations, including People in Need and Memory of Nations. The Prague Municipal Court has confirmed that Belarusian journalist Natalia Sudlyankova, who worked in the Czech Republic for many years, was an influential agent of Russia's military intelligence service GRU and actively spread Russian propaganda in the country. Sudlyankova, who had previously been granted asylum in Czechia, was placed on the government's sanctions list in April 2025 and forced to leave the country. The court rejected her lawsuit against the decision, drawing also on classified information, Czech Radio reported on Friday. According to the ruling, Sudlyankova was instructed and paid by a GRU officer and an employee of USM Holding, founded by sanctioned Russian oligarch Alisher Usmanov. She secretly worked in the interests of Russian organizations, including the GRU, the Foundation for the Protection and Support of the Rights of Compatriots Abroad, and the Immortal Regiment of Russia. A roughly 30-meter-high wind turbine collapsed onto a field near Pošťát in the Přerov district on Thursday. No one was injured. Police said strong winds may have caused the collapse. The turbine's blades had become jammed and the facility had been out of operation since early July. Its owner estimated the damage at 200,000 Czech crowns. According to the Czech Wind Energy Association, it is the first such accident in the country. Organisers have cancelled the Hip Hop Camp Festival at the last minute. The event was due to start on Friday near Královice in the Plzeň region. In a statement on Facebook, the organisers said circumstances had not been in their favour and the lineup had failed to attract enough people. They did not provide information on possible ticket refunds. The festival was due to return after a 6-year break. It was last held in 2019. Hip Hop Camp had been held in Czechia since 2002 and was considered the largest hip-hop festival in Central and Eastern Europe. Parts of Bohemia and Western Moravia could be hit by further severe thunderstorms on Friday afternoon and overnight into Saturday, with wind gusts of up to 90 kilometers per hour and rainfall of up to 70 millimeters, which could bring on flash floods in places, the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute said. The high-level warning is in effect from 4 p.m. Friday. For a belt stretching from South Bohemia through the central Bohemian region and Vysočina to the Pardubice and Hradec Králové regions. And finally, a quick look at the weather forecast for tomorrow. Saturday should be partly cloudy to overcast with rain showers in the northwestern parts of the country and daytime highs between 18 and 23 degrees Celsius. I'm Daniela Lazarova, and that's the end of the news.
August 21st, 1968 went down in Czechoslovak history as the day that Soviet-led Warsaw Pact troops crushed the Prague Spring reforms and the hopes of millions of people yearning for freedom and democracy. At a solemn ceremony outside the Czech radio building, political leaders laid wreaths to honor those who lost their lives in the invasion and highlighted the role of free media then and now. Romana Grajcerova has the story.
20 years after the Communist Party seized power in Czechoslovakia in February 1948, the Prague Spring emerged after a dark period, a time of hope and belief in a better future that, however, lasted only a very short time. It is primarily associated with Alexander Dubček, who advocated what became known as socialism with a human face. The movement was brutally suppressed on the 21st of August when troops from the Soviet Union and other allied countries invaded Czechoslovakia 58 years ago. The Czechoslovak radio building on Vinohradská Street, now home to Czech Radio, was one of the invaders' main targets. Citizens confronted the occupying troops in what became known as the Battle for Czechoslovak Radio, in which 17 people were killed. As every year on this day, a solemn commemorative ceremony was held at the entrance to the building on Vinohradská Street, with political representatives laying wreaths in the presence of a guard of honor and to the sounds of a brass band. The ceremony was followed by a series of speeches, starting with Czech Radio Director General René Zavoral.
Mnozí historici právě mají za to, že těch několik měsíců relativní svobody, kterým se říká Pražské jaro.
Many historians believe that those few months of relative freedom known as the Prague Spring were an experience that helped us endure the following 2 decades of totalitarian oppression. If we refuse to forget that day of betrayal, shame and national humiliation, it is not merely out of a sense of duty to mourn our fallen and seriously wounded fellow citizens. We probably remember because this event remains an unhealed wound and offers many lessons that remain relevant even today.
Mnoha poučení, jež neztratila svou aktuálnost ani dnes.
Above the heads of those gathered outside the Czech radio building, numerous banners could be seen expressing support for the independence of public service media. They were a response to the months-long debate over abolishing license fees and changing the way Czech radio and Czech television are funded. Many people view the government's proposal as an attack on media freedom. The parallel between defending public radio in the past and doing so today, therefore, also featured in Zavoral's speech.
Skutečnost, že právě zde před budovou Českého rozhlasu se odehrál největší střet mezi okupanty.
The fact that the largest confrontation between the occupiers and true Czech patriots took place here in front of the Czech radio building was no coincidence. It was an expression of the Czech public's instinctive determination to defend Czech radio as an independent source of information. That is why we consider this stretch of pavement in front of our building the most fitting place to commemorate those who lost their lives, while also reminding ourselves of our right to freedom and independence as an essential condition for fulfilling our mission.
Zásadní podmínku plnění našeho poslání.
After Zavoral, Czech President Petr Pavel took the stage to loud applause and chants of support. In his speech, he drew a parallel between the Soviet Union's expansionist ambitions in the past and Russia's aggressive policies today.
I když od invaze vojsk Varšavské smlouvy do našich zemí uběhlo už 58 let.
Although 58 years have now passed since the Warsaw Pact invasion of our country, the trauma of betrayal and the humiliation inflicted by our former allies remains deeply rooted in Czech society. As a result of this trauma, however, we as a nation could and should be more aware of and more sensitive to the aggressive and expansionist tendencies of today's Russia, and perhaps also more resilient to its propaganda. Unfortunately, there are still many people who seek to understand and justify Vladimir Putin and the Russian regime for their actions.
A ospravedlnění za jeho akce.
President Pavel highlighted Ukraine's courage in defending not only its own country, but Europe as a whole. He ended his speech, much like the Czech radio director, with an appeal to defend the freedom of public service media in the Czech Republic.
Veřejnoprávní média dnes opět čelí tlaku na omezení jejich svobody.
Public service media are once again facing pressure to restrict their freedom and independence, albeit in a more subtle way than the Russian-speaking soldiers with machine guns represented. Independent media are one of the fundamental pillars not only of our democracy, but of any democracy. Let us therefore not allow ourselves to lose them as a result of their gradual dismantling.
Oni v důsledku jejich postupného rozkladu přišli.
Those assembled at the ceremony voiced their support for the public media loud and clear, and the speeches of the representatives of the ruling coalition, Finance Minister Alena Schillerová and Chamber of Deputy Speaker Tomio Okamura, were almost drowned in whistling and booing.
Romana Grajcerova with that report. A painting of the death mask of Jan Palach was unveiled on Friday at a memorial to the young man who set himself on fire in connection with the Soviet-led invasion of Czechoslovakia that began on August 21, 1968. The work is by the UK resident visual artist Hynek Martinec, who attended the presentation ceremony in Veszatati, the central Bohemian village where Palach grew up. Ian Willoughby spoke to him beforehand.
In London, when there was a COVID, sort of like the lockdown, and we couldn't kind of walk almost to the parks, so I was like looking for some heroes from the past, and Jan Palach of course came out very quickly, so I kind of selected like 3-4 heroes, and I started to paint Jan Palach as the first painting, which is like 1 meter square painting, and so it really helps me to kind of survive somehow that sort of tricky era that the whole world was in. And so when I did it, I just felt like that this is actually a very positive message, because there is going to be the light at the end. Things will change.
I've seen a few death masks. They're very chilling things to see. Why did you choose to do the portrait or painting on the basis of the death mask rather than simply a photo of Palach alive?
Because I think it's more direct. So I wanted to show how difficult it must have been for, of course, the family and for the nation at that time. But it was the only kind of, seems like the proper waking up. Didn't happen, we know what followed afterwards. But I think when you look at that death mask, it's very striking. And so I painted like on the left sort of parts of the death mask, kind of like the tricolor, so like the red sort of color, blue, and to remind us like the Czechoslovakia sort of country. And so if I would paint him when he was like 15, or I did look at the online archive, so I did research many images by him or about him, and so I just thought that it needed to have a strong message, and that's the death mask, I think.
On Friday, you're presenting the painting for the first time at the Jan Palach Memorial.
Yeah.
What's the plan for the painting there?
Well, the plan is like to remain there for a few years. So I don't know, to be honest, like for how long, but I'm hoping for like 5, maybe more years. And so there was a quite good conclusion, because when I was approached by the Czech art dealer, Barbara Pulpanova, that she asked me that she could have potentially a collector, a buyer who would like to buy the painting. And I said, well, it's tricky, because I think this painting should speak publicly, should be shown in the public sort of building or institutions, and then we came to this kind of conclusion to show it, at Přetaty and Memorial of Jan Palach. So I'm so happy that there is like the collector agrees, the National Museum agrees, and now we are celebrating, on the 21st of August, kind of the event.
A final question. For many people, Palach was a hero, a great hero of the Czech nation. At the time when he died, the communists presented him as a naive young man who didn't know what he was doing, and that idea did take hold with some people. But how do you view his actual act, setting himself on fire in protest and apathy in the face of the Soviet occupation?
Yeah, exactly. This is such a higher stake, that he kind of committed suicide, basically. And I'm sure that many people would not agree with that, because he was young, he could kind of continue with his life, and he could be maybe politically active, but I'm not knowledgeable here, so I don't want to go deeper here. But for me, as I see it now, it's a positive sort of, and a key elements in Czech or Czechoslovakian culture. So I think he goes beyond that, and that's what is, for me as an artist, extremely important. So he somehow intuitively knew that this is needed to be done at the right time, at the right moment, to actually sending the message to the next generations. That's how I see his legacy, and from that point of view, I would always say this is a very positive, even it's extremely difficult to agree with the suicide, of course.
That was visual artist Hynek Martinec speaking to Ian Willoughby. A damaged statue of an angel believed to have inspired one of Karel Kryl's best-known songs is returning to the western Bohemian town of Ostrov. It will go on display in the local church on August 21st, the anniversary of the 1968 Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia. Ruth Frankova has the details.
Z rozmlácenýho kostela v krabici s kusem mýdla přinesl jsem si anděla, polámali mu kříž.
Karel Kryl's Anděl or Angel is one of the iconic tracks from his legendary 1969 debut album Bratříčku zavírej vrátka, released in response to the Soviet-led invasion of Czechoslovakia. The song tells the story of a soldier who finds an angel with broken wings in the ruins of a church and tries to nurse him back to health, eventually making him new wings from a brass cartridge casing. Kryl himself said he was inspired by the bleak landscape of the former Sudetenland, where many churches and other religious sites had been destroyed under communism. But the angel in the song may also have had a real-life model. A statue from a church in Ostrov, a small town in western Bohemia through which Soviet-led troops passed during the August 1968 invasion. For around a decade, the statue has been in the care of Tomáš Horina, who manages Červená Lhota Castle. He was given it by two ceramic artists who had attended the same secondary ceramics school as Kryl. Horina says the artists told him about another classmate who rescued the angel while doing his military service in Ostrov.
A měli tam ještě jednoho spolužáka, který byl toho času na vojně.
They had another classmate who was doing his military service at the time and was stationed in Ostrov nad Ohří. The monastery church there had been turned into a military barracks, and he saw what was happening to its decoration, including the angel. He wanted to save it, so he took it away. He later came to a reunion of his former classmates and unpacked the angel. He told them the story of how the soldiers were destroying the church. Karel Kryl was there too. He heard the story and saw the angel. Not long afterwards, the song about the smashed-up church was written.
According to Horina, the angel stood beside a statue of the Virgin Mary on the church's altar.
Ten anděl není velký, já nevím, je třeba vysoký 60 centimetrů.
The angel isn't large. I'd say it's about 60 centimeters tall. It's an adoring angel. We know now from historical photographs of the church in Ostrov nad Ohří that it stood beside the tabernacle, a glass-fronted shrine containing a statue of the Virgin Mary. The angel was on the left-hand side of it.
Byla socha Panny Marie, on byl z levé strany vedle ní.
Horina says the broken wing is one reason he sees a possible connection with Kryl's song, although he believes there were several sources of inspiration.
On samozřejmě ten anděl nebude jediný, i když ten jeho popis té písničce.
Of course, this angel was not necessarily the only source of inspiration, although the description in the song, including the fact that it has broken off wings, really does fit this particular angel. Kryl was also interested in collecting angels and other statues. He was deeply upset by the way sacred art was being destroyed during the communist era. So, in the song, the angel became a broader symbol of that destruction.
The story of the angel resurfaced when Professor Pavel Hošek was researching a book about Kryl. A friend of Horina's wife, Hošek, learned about the statue and became interested in its possible connection with the singer. His interest eventually helped bring the angel back to Ostrov. Before it goes on display there on the 21st of August, the statue will undergo some conservation treatment. The town has decided not to fully restore it, however, so that the damage remains visible as part of its history.
A proto prosím věř mi, chtěl jsem ho žádat, aby mi mezi dveřmi pomohl hádat, co mě čeká. A nemine, co mě čeká. A nemine.
Thank you, Ruth Frankova, for that report. Former Czech President Václav Klaus is known for his outspoken and often controversial views. But when Vít Pohanka interviewed him for Czechcast, he revealed another side, Václav Klaus the Pražák. Here is a little foretaste of their conversation.
Before asking Václav Klaus about Czechia today, politics and the wider world, we spent some time talking about Prague itself. Because if anyone is a true Pražák, it is Václav Klaus. He was born and raised in Vinohrady, not far from the Czech Radio building, and still vividly remembers the Prague of his childhood in the 1940s and the 50s, a city with virtually no traffic.
The famous Legerova street was really a street with no ends, with no connections on both sides, and there was no one there. There was one car in 10 minutes going.
Václav Klaus stayed in Vinohrady until he was 30. Then he moved with his family to Prosek on the northern outskirts of Prague. It was part of the rapidly expanding city, dominated by large, grey housing estates built from prefabricated concrete panels, typical for communist Czechoslovakia and a very different world from the traditional streets of Vinohrady.
So I moved when I was 30 years old. I I moved from Vinohrady to Prosek, which was for me at the time almost an unknown part somewhere in the north of Prague. So it was really typical communist experience.
The contrast between the Prague he knew as a young man and the city that grew around it remains striking to him. Klaus is particularly nostalgic about the character of the older neighborhoods like Davice and Hans Paluka, where he works now.
Really, this is a special for me, a typical example of an old, not in the historical sense, but of an old Prague, when it was still a normal city, not destroyed by building new apartments, buildings and new offices.
And when our conversation moved from memories of old Prague to the way the Czech capital looks and functions today, the former president certainly didn't mince his words.
You know, everyone is crazy. We are crazy with the way how the streets are repaired and the roads are made here in Prague. It's absolutely crazy. It's part of the city of Prague management, you know, which is absolutely irrational.
Václav Klaus and the Prague he remembers and the Prague he sees around him today. Coming soon on Czechcast, Radio Prague International's podcast in English about all things Czech.
Our time is almost up, but before we go, here's something that may be of interest to our listeners.
This is Radio Prague, Czechoslovakia.
On the occasion of our 90th anniversary, Radio Prague International has decided to celebrate this milestone with you. Our voice has been broadcast to the world for 9 decades. Now it is time for your voice to be heard on our program. Tell us your story. Why do you listen to Radio Prague International? Since when have you known Radio Prague International, and what does Radio Prague International mean to you today? And last but not least, choose one story from our archive and tell us why it resonated with you. And how to participate? You can either send us an email at english@radio.cz with a recording answering the questions above, send us your phone number so we can call you and record your answers, or send us your answers in written form and we will read them for you. Your responses can be anonymous, or they can include your name if you wish. In any case, they will become a central part of our special broadcast culminating in August, the month when Radio Prague International was established in 1936. For 90 years, our station has been broadcasting stories of people, places and events that we believe would be valuable to you. Now, in these uncertain times, more than ever, it is your story that would be of value to us. Share it with us, share it with the world. The floor is yours.
That's brought us to the end of today's 30-minute program from Prague. For more news, features, interviews, photos, and videos from Czechia, visit our website at www.radio.cz. You can also browse our full archive of broadcasts and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. From me, Sierra Krieger-Wolf, thank you for listening and have a beautiful rest of your day.